Thank you so much, Monica. It is a gift to have you be the one leading us through this evening. I'm so grateful to you. Greetings to everyone who has chosen to join us tonight. We thank you for your time and your attention. I can't help but remember our event last year was on the morning after the Nationals had won the World Series. I will never forget it. There was an air of celebration in the room. It was quite a time. Could any of us imagine then the difference a year would make? Wow, I feel that even as I say it. We're grateful to be together now as best we can. We hope you are enjoying your ice cream as we listen to inspiring voices of Jubilee. But let's also acknowledge how painful the year has been. It has broken us personally and socially in so many ways. We've seen more than 200,000 people die from COVID so far in our country, and the unrelenting systemic racism in its many forms has been further exposed. Friends, it's time for change. As you just heard, this season of pain and disruption has redoubled our commitment to justice through housing. I'd like you to consider two ways that we're called further to respond. The first way is as individuals. We must come to open ourselves to change, and we must want newness more than we want comfort and the status quo. Here's a favorite story of mine about a monk from Snowmass, Colorado that makes this point. I saw a monk working alone in a vegetable garden. I squatted down beside him and said, "Brother, what is your dream?" He looked straight at me. What a beautiful face he had. "I would like to become a monk," he answered. "But brother, you are a monk already, aren't you?" "Well, I've been here for 25 years, but I still carry a gun." He drew a revolver from the holster under his robe. It looked so strange, a monk carrying a gun. "And they won't, are you saying they won't let you become a monk until you give up your gun?" "No, it's not that. Most of them, I don't even know that I have it, but I know." "Well then, brother, why don't you give it up?" "I guess I've had it so long. I've been hurt a lot, and I've hurt others. I don't think I'd be comfortable without this gun." "But brother, you seem pretty uncomfortable with it." "Yes, pretty uncomfortable, but I have my dream." "Why don't you give me the gun?" I whispered. I was beginning to tremble. He did. He gave it to me. His tears ran down to the ground, and he embraced me. Friends, this person is not so different than the rest of us. I say I want to see a city that works for all residents. I want to see an end to the gaps that plague our communities, like the vast life expectancy differences based on which ward you live in, access to a good school no matter where you live, an end to homelessness, to lives taken unnecessarily by law enforcement. I want to see all these things, and yet something is blocked in me. As individuals, we are trapped in a way of being that continues to perpetuate these gaps. What is it that we're clinging to? Is it security? Approval? Are we clinging to the status quo? For me, if I'm honest, it's about the magnitude of the problem. The legacy of structural racism, with its disparities, have been here for so long. What can I really do to help reverse the situation? That may not be your block, but whatever it is, how do we learn to let go of it? So I believe it starts with relationships. In a house meeting just last night, a woman who was recently released from prison shared how excited she was to come home from work each day to make her own dinner and clean her own dishes. She said to the group, "I don't feel homeless anymore." I have an address, and an ID. Her housemate then said, yes, and it would be 10 times harder without Jubilee. I start to see from your eyes. When we are connected to each other, we can imagine what it would be like to lay down our gun, to lay down whatever we are clinging to. We can take the leap and go after the dream. So the second way we are called to respond is together, corporately, systemically. We must gather our shared resolve to build a society that is focused on equity. As you may have read, between March 18th and June 11th, the combined wealth of all US billionaires increased by more than $637 billion in the heart of the pandemic. At the same time, over 15 million people were losing their jobs. More in a few months of COVID than over the 2 years of the Great Depression. But let's look closer at our own city. For several years, DC has invested more per capita in affordable housing than any high-cost city in the nation. The mayor and DC Council have been investing well over $100 million in taxpayer dollars for affordable housing annually, leading to the preservation and production of around 1,000 homes per year. Last year, the mayor announced an unprecedented commitment to do even more by the year 2025, to include 36,000 new homes, 12,000 of which would be affordable to middle and low-income households, and then the pandemic. Overnight, the DC budget faced projected losses of more than $1 billion in revenue over the FY21 and 22 years. 130 or more $1 million in surplus revenue from the year before was reprogrammed, lost to affordable housing forever. With all the new development already underway, buildings purchased, ready for constructions like the ones you saw in the video, there was suddenly a backlog of quality projects and nowhere near enough money to move them. 24 total, 2,500 affordable homes passed threshold scoring only to be left waiting. Our Euclid and Kalorama project is one of them. Think of the 2,500 households left waiting to come home each evening in joy to make dinner and clean the dishes. Over the past months, we worked with housing advocates in the DC Council to increase funding by nearly $120 million in extra dollars to make up the gap, only to see a sizable chunk of those funds be given to a market developer where most of the homes will cater to high-end families. Somebody will punch me now. I know this is a lot of inside baseball talk. It might be hard to follow. The bottom line is that each unit that is stalled translates into a family that is waiting. I hope you feel it with me. Waiting for a dignified home, waiting for a platform to live out their dreams, waiting for justice. So what does it mean then to act together for equity now? Status quo says rebuild through the market, but that means those on top will climb higher while everyone else falls further behind. That is our gun that we must turn loose of. The recovery must prioritize equity. We will break free. Will we break free and use our power and voice to help bring about equity in our city? Will we tell our council members we'll gladly pay higher taxes if the funds are used to close gaps in housing accessibility and educational outcomes? Will we do like Yale Divinity professor Willie Jennings says and show up at zoning meetings to advocate land use decisions that favor deeply affordable housing rather than just more market rate housing alone? And friends, will we open our pocketbooks further than ever before? Will each of us, every one of us, share more of our own resources with those being left behind. Friends, if we want to pursue the dream of a city that works for all of its residents, in a nation united around the common good, then we need to do whatever it takes to get free, like our friend the monk, and start pursuing the dream. We cannot let this moment pass by. Now is the time to rebuild with equity at the center, placing deeply affordable housing in neighborhoods of opportunity. I want to close with these same words I used a minute ago. We must want newness more than we want comfort and more than we want the status quo. Please join us in creating a city where everyone thrives. Thank you for listening. I'll give it back to Monica.